Recidivism. It's a fancy word that basically means the rate at which criminals who are released from prison go on to commit further crimes. The figure in South Africa is, well, alarming. According to some experts, as high as 85 to 95% among murderers, rapists, and car hijackers. Basically, our prison system, with some exceptions, is taking in violent people and merely spewing them out again. Clearly, change is needed. You don't have to spend too much time in Norway to realize it can teach us a thing or two about building a prosperous, functioning society. Perhaps unexpectedly, it's got a few lessons about recidivism too. While you should be cautious about making hard and fast comparisons between South Africa and one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, when it comes to prisons and reducing reoffending rates, Norway is something of a world leader. So I'm traveling south to find out how it got there. Hard as it is to imagine, Norway faced its own reoffending challenges. In the early 1980s, its recidivism rate was around 60 to 70%. Their system, like ours, was broken. I guess the temptation in a situation like that would be to clamp down even harder, to impose stricter sentences and withhold parole. But Norway did precisely the opposite, with remarkable success. And the answer as to how they achieved that exactly lies just a few hundred meters down this road. I've traveled about 100 kilometers south of Oslo to speak to some Norwegians who know a thing or two about helping to turn a recidivism crisis on its head.
So camera is rolling.
Okay, audio all good?
Mm-hmm.
Happy with the camera? We're rolling?
Yeah.
And we've got speed, great. In 2013, 𝗃𝗃 raped, tortured and tried to kill a woman while visiting Brazil. He's unsure why he did it, saying he may have been possessed. A year later, he was sentenced to 2 decades in prison. By the time judgment was handed down, he'd been behind bars for over a year awaiting trial. Already a veteran of Brazil's notorious prison system and the brutality of some of its inmates.
So one guy pushed me, and when I turned around to him, the other guy came with a big stone in my head. You don't see it because of my hair, but my cranium, people in prison have less value than on the streets, you know. So they leave us to ourselves. So we have to, you know, make our own rules.
Things could have gone from bad to worse for Karsten, but in 2018, the Norwegian government arranged his transfer here, a facility unlike any you're likely to have seen. Think about virtually every prison movie you've ever seen. Think about the watchtowers, the razor wire, the snipers, the guard dogs. Then empty your head of all of those images, because what we have here is something completely different. This is Halden, often called the most humane prison in the world. It has the atmosphere of a university campus, an award-winning design purposely simulating life on the outside. Modern buildings surrounded by parkland, it's, well, not much like a prison at all. There are workshops, fully fitted and decorated visiting rooms, a larger guest house for overnight family stays, and an impressive prayer room. Apparently, the architects tried to separate internal buildings to encourage inmates to walk, to strengthen their bond with the outside world. Oh, and in 2010, it had a 16 million rand art budget, some of it spent on these motivational murals. So this is the cell.
This is my cell.
Karsten is one of 260 inmates. Is that a picture of you? Is that you there?
Yeah.
He arrived here 40 kilograms lighter, mentally weak, he says, afraid to venture outside. A picture on his wall shows a very different man staring through the bars of his Brazilian prison. You were a lot thinner then.
Even my father was concerned about me.
The cells in Halden have flat-screen televisions, DVD players, and ensuite bathrooms. That's a well-stocked fridge.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and they have fridges too, stocked with groceries bought at the prison store, paid for with money they're given for attending work or educational activities. And as if that weren't enough to convince you that Halden does confinement a little differently, the inmates here are given the keys to their cells.
So, for example, if I have to go somewhere to school, whatever, I lock it, this, and I put it in my pocket and go,
The officers, explains Karsten, retain a master key which allows them to keep the cells locked when required, which is generally 12 hours a day. Still, it's an unusual practice considering this is a maximum security prison, housing some of the country's worst offenders, from murderers to rapists. Every 10 cells share a common room, which wouldn't look out of place in a middle-class apartment. There's another flat-screen TV, a seating area, and a fully equipped kitchen. Linda Hansen is a correctional officer. The term guard is frowned upon here. Many of the officers at Halden are women, something their research shows discourages violence.
In all of these activities, we as correctional officers, we interact with them. So we play games, we sit and watch TV, we sit and eat like a normal family, big, huge family.
Like a family, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you say that, but I mean, it is, I guess, fairly unusual to have a family-type environment in a prison, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but you can see it as children in a way, that we just show them how normal life is.
The maximum sentence in Norway is 21 years, no matter your crime. So these prisoners will one day be someone's neighbor. In other words, there's method in this apparent madness.
I think that's very important, that everyone have a future, have possibilities to be released. If you know you shall sit in prison for life and never come out, you of course give up. And it's not important anything what you do. So I think that we have a hope is very important.
𝗶𝗶𝗴𝗶 is Halden's governor, the boss.
This prison is a high security prison, so it's very important to take care of the security still, of course. A very important part of the officer role is to work with change the inmates' behavior, motivate them to stop being criminals, to make a better future.
It's a television convention to introduce an interviewee by showing them working behind a desk. But you get the impression it's the last place 𝗀𝗏 wants to be. Here he is with American filmmaker Michael Moore. Turns out I'm one of many who've come knocking. A prison veteran familiar with the tough old days, he's the face of a system that favors rehabilitation over punishment. And he doesn't believe anyone is beyond redemption. Do you think that some prisoners are beyond rehabilitation?
No, we think that everyone can change. We have programs for also sex offenders. They give us feedback on that program and they say that program do something with them. So we believe that it's possible to also change sex offenders and pedophiles. We believe in that.
Those programs are run by professionals, but therapy of a more informal kind is left to officers like Linda.
I've had a lot of good conversation with inmates, and I think it's because they know us and they get to know us well, so they know that they can trust us, and then we will have the good conversation. So yeah, I've had many of those. It's nice.
At least here people have the chance to change. You know, and okay, everybody here knows they have done a crime, but should we get judged for that all rest of our lives? Or should we get to start to get a second chance? I've been in for 2 years now. I think I only seen 1 or 2 guys a second time coming back. In Brazil, I see the same guy coming back all the time.
And that is the clincher. This policy has reduced recidivism in Norway to just 20%, and who would argue that a remorseful Karsten released in Norway will likely make a better neighbor than a hateful Karsten released in Brazil? But results like that come at a price. Norway spends close to 2 million rand per prisoner per year at Halden. The figure in South Africa is closer to 140,000 rand. And one wonders whether a South Africa traumatized by crime is ready to cast aside a desire for retribution. I guess I'm still trying to digest what I've seen today, and I'm assuming that many of you are watching this at home thinking that perhaps it's a system that is a little too liberal. But the point is that for Norway at least, it's worked. At its center is a change in attitude, treating people with respect and getting respect back. So perhaps with some tinkering, it could work in South Africa too.